Hello everyone, and welcome to this Lifeboat exclusive special edition webcast. My name is Don Grease. I am the Manager of Business Development and Vendor Programs here at Lifeboat Distribution, and I thank you all for attending. Today's webcast is special because it is an event of firsts. For the first time ever, Lifeboat is privileged to have two of our publishers contributing to our webcast, and for the first time we will be discussing a crucial but often overlooked area of concern for customers, and that is, how exactly do I secure my virtual environments? Security is a top priority for virtualized data centers, and as an increasing number of enterprises worldwide turn to them to deliver applications and cloud services and to reduce costs and increase efficiencies, it's important that we take a look at this particular topic. And so today we will discuss in depth the best approaches to securing data and protecting virtual desktops and servers from malicious threats. To help us in this conversation, we have two publishers innovating with unique solutions to the problems of securing virtual environments, and we are very excited to welcome both Bitdefender and PHD Virtual. Bitdefender, well known for their AV protection for endpoints, also protects environments running VMware software or any other virtualization technology with their Gravity Zone Security for Virtual Environments solution. PHD Virtual offers world-class backup and replication for VMware, Citrix, and also offers cloud backup and recovery through their CloudHook module cloud service, as well as offering monitoring for your IT infrastructure with their virtual infrastructure monitoring product. So, we are in the right hands for a stimulating conversation about securing virtual environments, either at the server level or on the desktop. So now, without further ado, I want to thank our main panelists for their participation, and they are from Bitdefender, Susan Thomas, our Distribution and Channel Sales Manager, and Sean Donaldson, Director of Alliances at Bitdefender Enterprise. Welcome, Susan and Sean.
Thank you, Don.
And from PHD, hi, and from PHD Virtual, we welcome Joe Noonan, Senior Product Manager. Joe, it is also great to have you here with us, and thank you for joining.
Good to be here, Don. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. I can't wait to jump into the discussion, but just before we do that, I just want to encourage our great audience to ask questions, and you can do that by entering your questions in the Q&A panel on the right-hand side of the screen. At the conclusion of the conversation, we will answer as many questions as time permits. We are also going to be popping up some polling questions along the way. Please answer as many of the questions as you can. And remember, we are also going to give away a $100 Amex gift card to one lucky attendee before we sign off. And so with that, let's bring in our panel. Again, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Don.
All right. So, Susan knows this, but I was very excited to be able to do this when Susan got together with Bob Charlton, our channel manager from PHD, along with Helen Morse from PHD, and they said, you know, why don't we do a webinar on securing virtual environments? And, you know, here at Lifeboat, we offer many solutions for customers who have virtualized environments. But this is great to be able to discuss in some detail how to really protect those environments, and it's so valuable to our resellers. And we hope that they can take away from this discussion ways that they can better serve their customers and perhaps take away some barriers to future expansion of virtualization so they can continue to grow their businesses and make money. So with all that said, let's just start the conversation talking about security from outside threats. I think this is an area where we have not focused enough attention. So Sean, I'm going to start with you. And again, this is Sean Donaldson from Bitdefender. And Sean, are the threats to virtualized environments any different than the threats we protect physical environments from?
Well, and that's a great opening question, and it's something that is posed quite often. And frankly, when we look at the full risk profile, let's say, we've seen very little that is introduced by introducing virtualization into an environment. In fact, there are some benefits, but really the important thing is focusing on what composes the majority of the risk profile, and that is, to a very real degree, exactly the same as it was in physical environments. So intuitively, we know if we take a Windows, either an end user system, a desktop or a laptop, or a Windows server, or indeed a Linux system, and virtualize that workload, we're also virtualizing all the vulnerabilities that are in that operating system, the components that ride on top of that, and ultimately the applications. So the majority, the vast majority of the threats are the same as in a physical environment.
Okay, thank you for that. You know, there are lots of AV solutions for physical endpoints. Can a customer just use their traditional or legacy AV solution to protect their virtual environments?
Well, that's a great continuation of the question, because naturally, if we're virtualizing the workloads, if we're virtualizing the endpoints and virtualizing essentially the vulnerabilities that come along with them, then one might think, well, endpoint security, something like anti-malware, how we protect that endpoint from within the operating system, shouldn't we just virtualize that along with that endpoint workload? And the answer is that doesn't work very well, and it doesn't work because it doesn't follow the nature of virtualization. So with virtualization, we're endeavoring to centralize and deduplicate as much as we can. So let's not repeat across VMs what is duplicated. And by virtualizing, let's say, an endpoint security, an anti-malware client within an OS, and essentially repeating, duplicating that full anti-malware agent footprint within each VM, we're going against the grain in virtualization. And so if we try to follow that virtualize the security along with the endpoint idea, what we end up with is a whole bunch of duplication of the same anti-malware client and a whole bunch of wasted resources when, thanks to the architecture of virtualization, we can actually do centralized scanning from a single endpoint to scan all of the endpoints. We call that single endpoint a virtual appliance. And by doing that, remove a tremendous storage, CPU, and RAM impact from each VM, collapsing it into a single virtual appliance. So the answer is, when first virtualizing, you can get away with it. But when doing more advanced virtualization, when virtualizing a large percentage of the data center, or when looking at VDI, virtualized desktops, one is very much best advised to not try to use traditional endpoint security in a virtualized environment.
Okay, very good. All right, so let's say now I'm a customer and I'm protecting a physical environment, but I have a mixed virtualized data center with some VMware, some Hyper-V, there's even some Zen server from a recent acquisition, and we have some cloud services. Where do I even begin to figure out how to protect all of this from external threats? I mean, it sounds like it would be exhausting trying to keep up with all of this.
Yeah, that's true, and it absolutely can seem overwhelming, because from that perspective, we're going from a fairly homogeneous and well-understood infrastructure. I have Windows running on a whole bunch of different systems. I have Linux running on a whole bunch of different servers. I know how to treat them. I know how to deal with them. When I virtualize them, maybe I don't go 100% VMware or Hyper-V or Zen. Maybe some of those workloads, I push it into even public cloud, which tends to be based on Zen, for instance. So suddenly my environment has gone from well understood and quite homogeneous to introducing a factor that increases heterogeneity. So how do I deal with that? And the answer is, when looking back at my last answer, how do we centralize and deduplicate security? With VMware, we can take advantage of APIs within the VMware hypervisor. For instance, the Bitdefender solution is integrated with what is called vShield Endpoint. That allows us to basically scan those VMs from that central virtual appliance. But Citrix and Microsoft and certainly public cloud providers don't offer those. So what is needed is a way to do that same centralization and deduplication without necessarily relying on the hooks into the hypervisor. And fortunately, Bitdefender does have technology. When we're a very heavily R&D focused company, and from that R&D, we can essentially do that same centralize, deduplicate, free up resources, and provide the same security that traditional security can, but do it in a way that really optimizes the virtualization investment, and it's based on our own technology. So on the one hand, for VMware, there's a certain solution, and many vendors out there have embraced that solution and integrated with that VMware API. But at Bitdefender, we've gone beyond that so that we're independent of the underlying hypervisor, to the point that we actually have a version of our virtualization security solution, SVE, that's running as security as a service within Amazon on Marketplace. So we're extremely flexible, and that's important to also avoid vendor lock-in.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Now, Joe, I'm finally going to get to you, Joe, and this is Joe Noonan from PHD. So, Joe, while we're on the subject of a mixed virtual and cloud environment, again, let's say I'm a customer with this diverse environment, and I also have to back up the data in a secure and reliable way so that I can be assured of recovering that data when I need it. So what's my starting point, and what would be the approach PHD would take?
And that's a great question, Don. So the starting point here is really to sit down and take a look at your overall data protection needs. A lot of folks actually just jump in and try to back everything up in the same way, and that doesn't always need to be the case. So it's important to take a look at what's critical in the environment and has really strict recovery objectives, and then what might be less critical and therefore have less strict objectives, and then determine how you need to protect your data both locally and off-site. And where PHD tends to fit in great with these types of scenarios is that we support multiple hypervisors. So right now we support VMware and Citrix, and we're adding Hyper-V later in 2013 as well. We can protect your data locally on your premise. And we also have our Cloud Hook module that you alluded to earlier that will help you back up your data to the cloud for off-site data protection. And for other off-site needs that require strict recovery objectives, we can also do VM replication for disaster recovery. And all of these backup processes allow you to recover VMs and files pretty much nearly instantly in the event of a failure. So we really help to make the data protection process much easier, and we're very flexible in how we fit with whatever that strategy might be once you take a look at where you need to put your data and how strictly you need to recover it.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Well, you know, I hit you right out of the gate with a complex issue, so let's break it down and make it a little simpler. What are the key issues to address when backing up data in a virtualized environment, and how does PHD address those key issues, and how does PHD differentiate itself?
So the main challenges really revolve around cost and complexity. So recovery objectives, for the most part, remain very short these days, and VM data growth is obviously still pretty healthy. And that presents a problem for a lot of folks. And all the while, there's some great new technologies like cloud coming out, and they create opportunity, but there's also a lot of confusion with regard to how to materialize their value. Now, where PHD Virtual is heavily focused is making complex tasks in the virtual environment much easier for our users and far more affordable than alternatives. So there's three key things that help us differentiate in that regard to help kind of break that down, because a lot of folks say that they're easy and a lot of folks say they're affordable. So the meat to our value proposition around those two tenets is, first, we leverage your existing virtual infrastructure. You don't have to pay for additional servers. You don't have to connect them into your expensive SAN infrastructure, nor do you have to manage additional Windows machines as a result of your backup infrastructure. We deploy in just a few short minutes as a Linux virtual appliance, and we efficiently do everything that we need right from within the virtual environment itself. So that's the first part. Second is we plug directly into the hypervisor client interfaces. So for VMware, you're talking about the vSphere client, and for Citrix, you're talking about the XenCenter client. These are the interfaces that the virtualization admins spend pretty much all their time using, and therefore their time to value with PHD Virtual is extremely shortened because they simply just right-click a VM and select backup, recover, or replicate, and it really is that simple. And the third piece is, it's not enough to say that you're storage agnostic as a backup product anymore. Most backup vendors say that. However, an interesting thing with PHD is that we have multiple backup modes that store data in multiple ways to optimize how different storage targets are going to perform. So it really doesn't matter if you're backing up to the cloud, to a local disk, or even like a brand new dedupe appliance that you put in your environment, like an ExtraGrid box. We can perform optimally for whatever your target might be because of those multiple backup modes. So those three items, coupled with some really powerful recovery options, help us take the cost and complexity out of the picture for our customers and our partners.
That sounds great. I mean, just awesome. So this is, a complex issue, protecting virtual environments. I wanted to try to, look at a real-world scenario to maybe help illustrate better just exactly what we're talking about. So, for instance, look at last October when we got hit with Superstorm Sandy here in the Northeast. There were significant outages all over the place. Lots of companies had outages. So, Joe, still sticking with you, how can PHD help protect the data for customers that might be affected by a similar event in the future?
Yeah, this is always a great topic, and Sandy is a good example. Obviously something recent that we all were faced with here in the Northeast. So in cases where there's a serious disaster and people are experiencing full site outages, it's really important that you have a good DR plan in place. And the key here is getting data off-site from the backup perspective. Now, PHD helps in a couple of different ways in doing this. So if you have a secondary site, we can back up your VMs locally and then replicate the VMs from that backup data to off-site virtual infrastructure for disaster recovery. So if you lose your local environment completely, you have a standby environment waiting to be brought up very quickly. And this type of strategy really decreases the downtime in the event of a major storm like Sandy. Now, let's say you're a smaller business and you can't afford a secondary site. Your key objective isn't necessarily getting backing up and running as quickly as possible, but really ensuring that no matter what happens, your data is protected and available when you do have a site back online, wherever you may choose to stand it up. It might be at a colo facility. It might be you wait for your environment to be back up and running in your own facility. And this is where our CloudHook technology comes into play. So with CloudHook, you can officially back up to storage that resides in the cloud. And because your encrypted backup data is accessible easily over the internet, you can basically recover your data to just about any location you choose to bring your environment up in. And this ensures that as little data as possible is lost in these really tough situations. So you have to look at data loss and recovery times, and depending on the size of the customer and their capabilities to have secondary sites, their objectives are definitely going to be different, but we have ways of protecting the data and bringing them back up regardless of what that strategy might be.
Perfect. And now, Sean, I'm going to come back to you with a question on the same topic. So PHD has an ability to give customers a real advantage by offering a way to protect their data even in a worst-case scenario by backing that data up into the cloud. How can Bitdefender protect the customer's cloud services from some sort of malicious threat?
Well, you know, certainly at Bitdefender, we would never advertise that our endpoint security can protect from a hurricane. I don't mean to make light, but that's
right.
Of course there are different points in the protection cycle, and everything is important in that cycle or that spectrum, if you will. Certainly, what Joe is talking about from PHD. You need to have a backup. You need to have a plan B and a way to access that. That is, of course, built into the infrastructure and is about where the data resides. Where Bitdefender is helping customers is a bit more outward-facing, where we're looking at the systems that are potentially vulnerable to, as you say, Don, malicious attack, and protecting those systems. In other words, protect the data. That's the ultimate goal of an enterprise. Data is extremely valuable, so it needs to be backed up. But the integrity of that data, protecting it from malicious attacks, is equally important. So really what we provide in that equation is the comfort, if you will, of having the best possible protection. And Bitdefender is very, very highly rated when it comes to how good we are at protecting systems from attack. Protecting those systems really means protecting the data ultimately. How that is done, and this starts going back to an earlier question that you asked, how we do that, and that we are able to do that across multiple hypervisors, whether it's a private cloud or a public cloud like Amazon or GoGrid or whichever it may be. Being able to do that across all of those systems is what's important, but ultimately how good the security that is being provided is really the most important thing when it comes to protecting an endpoint. And at Bitdefender, we're very good at both sides of the house, providing it in ways that optimize environments, while at the same time providing what we think is the best security out there.
Thank you. Now, the next area that I want to explore with you both is when it comes to virtualized environments, how do you each address performance versus the level of protection you can provide? And Joe, I want to go back to you to start this one off.
Sure, and this one's a great question because, to be fair, looking at the backup side of things, it's a pretty resource-intensive process. You're reading lots of data, processing lots of data, and moving lots of data across a network. So it's really important that as a vendor, you do everything you can to ensure as little impact as possible to the production environment during this process. Now, for PHD, first, we're an agentless technology, and it's not that agent-based technologies are bad, but you need to take into account how that impacts the virtual environment. And we don't perform any backup data processing within the guest of a VM. And that's an important part for us. We do it at the storage level through the hypervisor APIs. Secondly, our virtual appliance footprint is really, really small. With 2 vCPUs and a gig of memory, we can process several terabytes of data with a single VBA. And we also have very efficient data reduction technologies. And Sean had mentioned deduplication earlier. It's very important in the backup process, obviously. So you need to ensure that you're moving as little data as possible over the WAN or over the LAN and using as little bandwidth from the host as possible so that your production applications are the ones that get the bandwidth for their general I/O purposes. And additionally, we process multiple VMs at a time for performance purposes. So we do concurrent processing. But it's done in a controlled way. That way users can throttle it down even if they need to. So we don't just try to back up every VM at the same time. That creates huge bottlenecks on the host and can impact production in a big way. But we can take advantage of the performance benefits of concurrent processing in a much more controlled fashion. The last piece here is really we manage snapshots very efficiently. And we talk about snapshots are a core part of the backup process for agentless technologies. But you don't want them open any longer than you need them because they do have some impact. So we're sure to delete our snapshots as soon as we're done processing a VM so that production I/O has as little impact as possible during the backup process. So there's a number of architectural and design factors when you want to be a purpose-built solution for virtualization that needs to take those virtual environment characteristics into account, because you have lots of applications sharing hardware. And we feel we do a pretty good job of managing that scenario.
Okay, great. Sean, let me go back to you with that same question. How do you address performance versus the level of protection that you provide?
Well, performance is definitely the key, and as the slide that's up right now, we show how we centralize and deduplicate, and as Joe touched on, it's about following the tenets of virtualization. So wherever we can, and indeed both of our solution sets follow these tenets, do things from a virtual appliance. In both of our cases, Linux-based hardened virtual appliance. And it's actually quite intuitive when it comes to performance. If in, let's say, the first scenario using a traditional solution, I put a full anti-malware client within each and every VM, I'm duplicating the signature database, I'm duplicating the scanning, I'm not sharing intelligence across all of those systems, and I'm really not optimizing at all. Whereas if we collapse down to a virtual appliance and a very small footprint, whether it's Bitdefender tools or VMware tools that we're leveraging, that very small footprint that we leave behind in the VM, it doesn't actually do any scanning. All that it does is look at the processes, the memory, the file system, and say, have I seen this before? If I don't have an answer, I'm going to ask the virtual appliance, have you seen this before? And the virtual appliance is, of course, viewing the environment across all of the VMs. And so there's a very good chance it will have seen the file or process, registry entry, whatever it may be in question. It will have seen it before. So there's a centralized cache. And at the end of the day, that virtual appliance, although it's the only part of the system that is doing any scanning, therefore the only part of the system that needs to be updated, upgraded, or maintained, it's not really doing very much scanning, because essentially once it's scanned a few VMs, it knows 99% of what is on the other VMs. So very intuitively from that explanation, we can understand how optimization is increased drastically versus indeed running these operating systems on our traditional hardware. So it's really less a matter of optimizing for virtualization as it's using the optimizations that are available within virtualization to make everything operate much more efficiently in a virtualized environment versus a traditional environment.
Okay, thank you. That was interesting. And I have one last question on protection, and if we could just sum this up, you know, as concisely as possible. I'm just wondering, you know, throughout this conversation, for each of you, would you say it is fair that a case can be made that by offering high performance, lightweight, and cost-effective data protection and security solutions, that itself can remove a barrier for customers to further expansion of their virtualized environments? And Joe, let's start with you, please, on that.
Well, yeah, Don, it definitely does for sure. That's evident by the number of critical applications that are virtualized these days. You have Exchange, SQL, and other transactional database that in the past, even their developers put best practices in place not to virtualize them. But that's changed now. So for data protection, with products like PHD that design their technology to support and protect applications that share the same hardware and do it in a cost-effective way, you now open up the value of virtualization to a much larger portion of the IT infrastructure and really make it feasible to virtualize 100% of your environment. And as a result, we actually have many customers that really are 100% virtualized. I know not everyone will be able to get there, but for sure, you know, these barriers are definitely falling, and it definitely contributes to the expansion.
Okay, and Sean, how about you?
I 100% agree with Joe, and I'd even go further. I would say perhaps 2 or 3 years ago, we were trying to take objections off the table as to why an organization would pursue virtualization or further their virtualization or cloud investment. We're at the point now where we're an actual value. We're part of the positive equation, not just trying to take things off of the table to facilitate virtualization. So definitely the game has changed over the last short while, and that's really exciting for us, virtualization practitioners, and all around it's a great new way to do things.
That's awesome. That's great news for our audience today. We're going to switch gears now because just as it is important for our great audience of resellers to know about the solutions you both offer, it's just as important for them to understand the advantages of partnering with your great company. So I am happy to say that you are both dedicated to the channel, and Lifeboat enjoys a close and profitable relationship for each of you. But Susan, I'm going to start with you, and this is Susan Thomas, our Director of Channels from Bitdefender. Susan, how can our resellers also enjoy such a profitable relationship with Bitdefender?
Okay, great. And as you said, Don, we are very channel friendly. In fact, 100% of our revenues are driven through our channel partners. One of the things about Bitdefender is we offer very high margins. I mean, so the partners will make more money by recommending and selling our products by the higher margins that we can offer them. We also offer special pricing, especially on the competitive upgrades. So currently, most people have an AV in place. So we offer competitive special pricing, which is 35% less than our standard pricing. Being part of our partner program, we also offer SE pre-sales support so that your customers can make an informed decision when they're purchasing our product. We also offer specialized and customized sales training and also product training, in-depth product training for our partners. Currently now we're running a couple of promotions through the end of June. The first one that we're offering is we have spiffs on all of our products, $2 each on any new product sold, and $1 on any renewal. We're also offering a buy 2 years, get the 3rd year free. And then lastly, we're offering a deal reg for any of our partners who purchase our products now through June 30th, an extra 20% off.
All right, that's outstanding. Thank you very much, Susan. And then Joe or Helen from PHD, what can you tell us about the benefits of partnering with PHD, please?
Yeah, thanks, Don. So as you know, working with Lifeboat PHD being your partner, the PHD partner program has really changed a lot in the past 6 months. Throughout North, Central, and South America, Lifeboat's our key distribution partner, and we continue to make a move to a distribution-centric partner sales model. And all of our system integrators interested in becoming a PHD partner can just spend a few minutes completing our online application and name Lifeboat as their distributor. And for those partners who already have a relationship with you guys at Lifeboat, we'll quickly get them approved, and they'll be listed as an authorized partner on the PHD website, get access to the partner portal that we have, and get access to all the current promotions, competitive positioning, webinar and email campaigns, as well as online sales training. And I really think that the most important benefit of PHD partnership is the PHD Lifeboat team. So partners need quotes fast, and Lifeboat provides that very quickly. And supporting that, PHD provides expert sales resources to talk with customers, provide technical presentations, etc. And they get ramped up really quickly with PHD technologies. And frankly speaking, it takes time to get up to speed on new technologies, and we understand that. So the PHD Lifeboat teams really make sure you win deals and make money with PHD solutions while you're learning the technology.
Thank you. Thank you both for that. And so to wrap this up in a big way, I'm going to ask the biggest question, which is, can I as a reseller really make money selling Bitdefender and selling PHD Virtual? So Joe, we'll stick with you. what is the potential for earning additional money beyond selling licenses of PHD Virtual?
That definitely is a big question, of course. So I'll talk a little bit about licenses and margins and things like that, and then, of course, the service component of it. So I mentioned earlier that PHD definitely works hard to help our partners sell the deals, but we also do provide great margins. And like every other company out there that has, regular discount pricing and deal registration, we have those things, of course. But when you add in the regular promotions that we have, like competitive replacements or special promotions like the one we have going on right now where you get 20% off the list price for the VMware Management Suite, which includes our backup and monitoring product, or we have a promotion right now where you're getting CloudHook for free, which is out there today. There's plenty of extra margins, especially for those systems integrators that sell complete solutions with hardware, software, and professional services. And I mentioned earlier in one of the very first questions how well we integrate into just about any environment, where I talked about multiple backup modes and the existing interfaces and things like that. That really allows partners to package us easily with many other surrounding technologies and services. And you can be sure that PHD is going to play really well within that group of technologies, which is great for solution-based and service-based selling. I'll give you a really quick example of a deal in progress, for instance. So it's a PHD Lifeboat partner. They have an opportunity that's going to close by the end of the month, and they're going to be implementing a private cloud. And the PHD portion of the quote with backup and monitor is additive to the whole solution. And in this particular case, services are actually minimal. But with the deal registration and the current PHD promotions and the potential for the long-term agreement for monitoring as a service, the potential for higher overall margins is still really great for this partner, even without a whole lot of value-added services being included. So again, this is where we believe PHD can help you sell with us and both of us be really successful.
All right. Well, thank you so much. You all did just a terrific job with the conversation. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to move into looking at the questions that have come through. I'll start with a question from one of our resellers, which I think is directed, it is directed to you, Joe. They would like to know if a customer who's doing a backup using PHD, if they have to restore to the same exact hardware.
They definitely do not, and that's one of the nice things about PHD being a software-based virtual appliance. You can restore to different server hardware, and you can restore to different storage hardware. We are agnostic in that sense. So if you're doing, and as well with replication, you can replicate VMs from one environment that might have one server and storage vendor under it to a DR site that has a completely different set of vendors. We play very nicely. It's really about marrying the protocols to the way that we move the data. And like I mentioned, we have multiple ways of moving it so that regardless of what you have on either end, we're gonna be efficient and we're gonna be fast.
Perfect. And Susan, it looks like I have one coming your way. One of our resellers has a question regarding the SPIF and would like to know if the SPIF is capped at any particular amount.
It's capped at $1,000 per order.
Okay. All right. Terrific. All right. Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, I'm going to do a quick call to action. And while I'm running through that slide, I invite you to, continue to think about the conversation. And if you have any additional questions, please enter them, and we will go through them before we sign off. Actually, I just got one other. This question is, how do we determine a trade-up opportunity? And I will let any of you take the lead on that one.
So I'm not sure exactly what is meant by trade up, but I'll answer it from my perspective, and this is Sean here. To me, when a customer is looking at virtualizing or furthering virtualization, whatever traditional anti-malware they're using, obviously, as we've discussed, they will run into problems. And so the virtualization endpoint security, we think of it as the thin end of the wedge. That really opens the door to a new account, provides our partners with value to essentially go in and have discussions about what is really traditionally thought of as a pretty commoditized product. So to go in with something unique and have a conversation that is about performance, not just security. Once that thin end of the wedge opens the door, then for us, really the trade-up or the pull-through is customers quite often then want to talk about the rest of the endpoint security and traditional security, whether Exchange, SharePoint, laptops, traditional servers, and really expand the conversation. So forgive the analogy, but the virtualization security it's really the hamburger, and everything else, the deal upsizing is the fries and a shake that go with it. So I'm not sure if that's what was meant. I hope I came close to answering the question.
Thanks, Sean.
And this is Joe. Just to kind of elaborate a little bit, I'll take a different stance to it, just in case I've interpreted it a little bit differently. But I mentioned competitive replacement a few times in my write-up. So if we're talking about from a trade-up perspective, the ability to kind of recognize deals where an incumbent might be there and you're looking to replace one of them and looking for additional discount as a result. Working with our channel partners here at PHD will certainly help you validate whether a deal qualifies. We are very aggressive with those types of deals, especially with certain competitors. So, it's definitely something we have as a formal program.
Okay. Thank you both for that. Actually, before I go to the call to action, ladies and gentlemen, I promised you that we were giving away a $100 Amex gift card. So let me just pull the name out of the hat today and see who we have. And today our winner is Holly Savitt from CDWG. Congratulations, Holly. Thank you very much for your participation, and thank you everyone for your participation. Now, as we move on to our call to action, this is where we provide you with some recommended next steps if you would like to get more information and become active partnering and selling these two great solutions that you've heard about today. For more information on securing virtual environments for existing PHD partners, if you are one, you of course have the great PHD Virtual Partner Portal. If you are interested in signing up as a PHD partner, we want to direct you to a slightly different link there, which is at phdvirtual.com/partners. And for Bitdefender, for anything you want to know about Bitdefender's partner program or to access the resources from their portal, we have a link up on the screen that you can go to find great resources. Both partner portals for both companies offer data sheets and information on their channel program, as well as training and much, much more. We also highly recommend, of course, that you contact your Lifeboat sales rep. We are here every day, and we are standing at the ready to offer you pricing and pre-sales assistance and product information. So let me take one additional look here for questions. And while I'm at it, I want to also add that if you require a deeper dive demo for either of the products that were discussed today, contact your Lifeboat rep. We would be happy to arrange a deep dive demo with either the great folks from Bitdefender or the great folks from PHD Virtual. I think that we have gone through the questions that have been offered by our resellers. Again, as you think about things and if any questions come to mind, feel free to reach out to Lifeboat Distribution. I have Susan Thomas's contact information here for Bitdefender and Bob Charlton, who is one of our channel managers at PHD Virtual. We're all here able and willing and very ready to help you grow your business, grow your deals, and find success in securing your customers' virtual environments. I want to thank my excellent panel today, So Susan and Sean from Bitdefender, thanks so much for everything. We enjoyed talking to you today. And Joe Noonan, thank you for your support of this webinar and for your great contribution. You guys were awesome today, and we appreciate it.
Thank you,
Don.
Don.
It's great to be there.
Thank you. No further questions. So with that, I'm going to say thank you to all of our attendees and our great and wonderful audience, for everybody here at Lifeboat Distribution, at Bitdefender, and at PHD Virtual. Have a great day. We look forward to hearing from you soon. Bye now.
Thank you.